Okay, so we're going to kick things off this afternoon with another fireside discussion. And please join me in welcoming to the stage Marsha Mcintosh. Marsha.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Very good. How are you?
I am well, thank you.
Okay, now Marsha is President of North America Supply at Diageo. I think that's correct. We were talking just backstage. Now, this is water that's in front of us, by the way. If you don't know who Diageo are, that will all become clear in a second. So why don't we start by painting the picture? Tell us a little bit about Diageo.
So I lead supply for our North America Supply organization. So for folks that don't know Diageo, what I always tell people is, hopefully when I talk, you know our brands. So some of our amazing brands are Johnnie Walker, Crown Royal, Smirnoff, Kettle One. Hopefully some of those are familiar to you guys.
Very familiar by the looks of it, yeah.
So we are a premium drinks business. We have over 200 brands across 180 countries globally. In North America, we have 12 production facilities. We produce around 62 million cases of those amazing brands that we talked about. And those production facilities are a combination of distillation and packaging. And for us, if you think about what we do, sustainability is embedded in everything we do. So in our organization, we talk a lot about from grain to glass. So for us, it's everything from sourcing grain. So if you think about bourbon, for any of the hopefully bourbon lovers in the room, it's the corn, it's fantastic. It's the corn. And then going through distillation, we use a tremendous amount of heat through our distillation process. And then everything in terms of packaging as well. And so for us, we look at everything around carbon, water, packaging. But the priority for us is water and carbon because it's so important to our business and our industry.
Yeah, I was talking to someone else about water earlier. Is she here? Yes, she's just walking in now. Water is something that we haven't talked about a lot, and I'm sure we will touch on this later on. But I want to talk about your ambitious, it's fair to say, climate goals as part of what I believe is the Society 2030 Spirit of Progress action plan. So maybe you can tell us more about that and also tell us what Diageo is doing within your supply chain to achieve those goals.
Yeah, so we have some really ambitious goals around water and basically reduce, reuse, and in places where we're water stressed, how do we think about water differently? And then also really significant goals around decarbonization and packaging. I'll talk a little bit about decarbonization. So one of the things that we're incredibly proud of in North America is we built the first carbon neutral distillery in Kentucky. And that really is around us on the journey around decarbonization across our sites. So we have an ambition to be net zero by 2030, which seems really, really close now. It seemed, when we made those ambitions, it seemed like a long way off. But we're, I would say, it's within sight for us. So one of the things that we're working on is how do we do that? The other thing we are really focused on ambitious from an ambition standpoint is if you think about our business, everything from marketing to products, we use a lot of packaging. So how do we think about recycled content in our packaging? How do we think about reducing the amount of packaging that we do? So there's also quite a bit of work that we're doing there. And for that work, we're doing, and I know everybody talks about partnerships, but they are really, really important in terms of who are supplier bases. So a couple of things that we've done is we have partnered with suppliers that have helped us around recycled content, as an example in our corrugate. So in North America, over 95% of the corrugate that we uses recycled content. So those are the types of things that we're very much focused on to achieve our ambition. It's been a fantastic journey for us.
And you mentioned the fact that 2030 is not that far away. Not that far away. How far along that journey are you? And I've asked a few CSOs that today, and I haven't got a very clear answer. Are you happy with the progress you've made so far on this journey to 2030?
Yes. So for us, one of the things that we're quite excited about, particularly when I think about the work that we're doing on decarbonization, when we started on this journey, I would say in 2020, we had a clear roadmap. And as I look to the future in terms of the roadmap, we're well on our way. And we are on track right now to deliver against the roadmap that we set out.
Okay, perfect. So you mentioned there decarbonisation. What are, let's say, 2 learnings that you can share from that journey and decarbonising your operations in the beverage industry, which you've already said is a significant challenge?
It is. So when we look at projects, we look at two things, and I would say this has probably been the biggest learning for us. We look at everything in what we call a triple win. So what the triple win looks at is the communities in which we operate, how will they impact our customers and consumers, and candidly, how will they impact our bottom line? Because that's something that's very real for not just our business, but any business. And then the other thing for decarbonization is we looked at fit for purpose. So we have done decarbonization with our Lebanon distillery. And when we started on that journey, I would say we were incredibly enthusiastic. It was very early on our sustainability journey. And one of the things that we did, that we have learned since, is be quite thoughtful about who you choose as your partner. I think for us, it was an area that we were pioneering. And we were in, it's the first time it had ever been done. It's the first time we had ever done it. So we chose, as we thought about our partner, we were looking at who, as we looked around, we chose a partner that we'd already had a relationship with. And in retrospect, they were incredibly enthusiastic, as were we. But how far along were they on their maturity curve in helping us to get there? So what we found is we were learning together versus choosing a partner that could help us get there faster. So we've taken those learnings since. And the other big learning that when we did that was also fit for purpose. So we've decarbonized our facility in Kentucky, and then we have distilleries not just in Kentucky, but it also in Canada. So as we looked to our Canadian business, we took those learnings and reapplied them. So in Canada, the solution looks slightly different because we didn't partner with just the utilities, because also the energy source was also different in Canada versus Kentucky. So we partnered with Hydro-Quebec. We had them help us build a substation really close to our facility. And as a result of that, we chose a slightly different solution, just taking the learnings that we had. And the biggest thing I would say as we went on that journey, in addition to the partnership and triple win, was we started with improving your efficiency before you actually start to decarbonize. Because there's a lot from a cost standpoint, our ability to decarbonize at a cost that makes sense for our bottom line. Going in and looking at how you can first make your process more efficient was essential as we went along that journey. So the great thing is I'm not only responsible for sustainability, I'm also responsible for the entire supply chain. So productivity, efficiency is really, really important. So having folks on the team that had that way in thinking in terms of manufacturing excellence is really important for us in terms of let's make it as efficient as possible, then let's bring in decarbonization.
I suppose that helps to get buy-in from senior leadership as well, right? If you're showing some gains, then you can get backing to do the sustainable action that you need to take.
Yes, because and one of the conversations that we're always having is there's a cost of decarbonization. So how do you fund that? And for us, how we've looked at it in a different models is how do we get as efficient as possible and use those efficiency gains to help fund the decarbonization.
Okay. So how are you driving those efficiencies, and how are you innovating to do that? I imagine that innovation is a huge part of this, and no doubt technology plays a significant role in that. But give us your insights. How are you doing that? How are you innovating?
Yeah, so a couple of things that we've done on an innovation and how we've gained efficiency. As an example, when we built our Lebanon distillery, we invested in a 22-foot electrode boiler. It's the first time we'd actually done an electrode boiler in our manufacturing footprint. And as a result of that, we actually were able to reduce the amount of, we were able to improve our net zero emissions. We actually improved it by 117 metric tons. So that was something new for us. So we actually took those learnings and applied them when we went to Valleyfield. So that's one of the things that we've done. We've also recently, and this is something that we're incredibly proud of, been chosen, and the team keeps reminding me I have to say this, we're still negotiating with the Department of Energy on our grant for $75 million. And as a part of that grant, we will decarbonize both our Shelbyville facility as well as our Plainfield facility by 2026 and 2028, respectively. So we're partnering with Rondo Energy, and their technology is, again, a space that we're pioneering in for CPG. And what they do is it's battery technology where that allows us to actually capture energy and hold it at net zero impact for our sites across those two facilities. So we're quite excited about what that will mean for us because, again, this is a space that's new for us, and choosing the right partner was really important as we went into this. So,
yeah, actually, going back to a point you made earlier, you talked about how important partners are, and you mentioned how previously you worked with a partner who was learning with you rather than a partner that was further along their own journey that might have accelerated your own transformation, I suppose. Do you think there's benefits of doing it together, to taking those steps together, like you said, you did with your partner? Or in retrospect, do you think it would have been better to go with someone who was further advanced in their
I think
journey?
one of the things that we've learned is it kind of depends, because the reality is if you think of the geography that we were operating in at the time, there weren't as many partners that were further along. So which kind of guided us to working with somebody that we were learning with. And the reality is we got a tremendous amount of learnings that we then took to a partner that was probably further along when we went to Canada and helped us there as well. We are now applying both those learnings to the program that we're now working with Rondo Energy on for the 2 other facilities. So a few things, like the big learning was being more efficient first. So that necessarily wasn't our approach. The other thing that we learned as we went along was the triple wins and how important that was in terms of understanding the cost landscape and thinking about for the long term, how do we actually not just improve our energy efficiency, but overall think of total cost of ownership. So those are 2 of the things that I think the reality is if we had not done those 2 different programs, we wouldn't have got those lessons. So I know it's one of those, it kind of depends, but it depended. But
No, I get that completely. So you feel better equipped now to work with partners because you have had that experience and those learnings, and you can probably make more advancement now at a quicker pace.
Yes. So if I think about, this is a conversation we're recently having, how do we engage with the local municipalities? That's a lesson that we learned. How early do we engage with them? Because one of the things that as we're doing all of this innovation, the devil is in the details. So if you think about all the work that needs to happen in terms of getting all of the permitting done, and that's something that people don't always think about up front. So we've actually started really, really early engagement as we were looking at the 2 other facilities. The other thing that we've learned is there are things that you can do in parallel. So rather than waiting for one piece of the program to be done and then moving on, if you're going to be doing sourcing with other partners, how do you do those things in parallel to keep the timeline flowing so you don't lose time as well? So those are a few of the learnings that we've taken as we've moved along.
Now, we're already 15 minutes in, and we haven't mentioned those dreaded initials A and I. So how is Diageo using AI, if at all, to help drive your sustainability efforts?
So we are using AI. We're actually using AI in our Mexico business. So if there are any tequila fans, Don Julio is one of our brands, as well as Casamigos, just to name a few. And in Mexico, it's water stressed. And so one of the things that we have done is we both own our own agave fields, as well as we have partnerships. And in a water stressed area, we're thinking about how do we be as efficient as possible with the use of water. So we now have drones that actually fly over all of our agave fields, and they look at the landmass, they look at how much water, they look at fertilization, and then they take that AI back to us. And so rather than us watering an entire agave field, we're actually more intentional in terms of how we fertilize and how we water. And that's coming from that AI technology. And candidly, we hadn't even thought of that when we initially used drones. But as we've used that partner, they told us, well, actually, while we're doing this, here's all of the other information that we can gather for you. So we've now applied that in Mexico, and it's been fantastic.
That's really interesting. And do you have any idea how much water that's saving? I know I'm asking you to pull out a statistic here.
I do not have that at the tip of my tongue, but we can absolutely get that.
Okay, all right. I'll fill you all in later about the numbers there. But obviously, it's great that you're actually taking that initiative, and that's a really great example of how technology can help you achieve those goals there. Another thing you mentioned earlier was about energy sourcing. And long term, where do you see the biggest opportunity from renewables? And maybe this ties back into the battery technology that you're using as well. So what is your long-term aim for your energy?
So for us, we think it will come from a few different places, and we believe it will depend on, from a regionality standpoint, what's available in the region. So if I think about what we did in Lebanon, it was very much solar. When we went to our facility in Canada, it was hydroelectric. So for us, it's about what's available in the region. how cost effective it is to source that energy in the region, and being open to knowing that it will potentially look different depending on not just what part of North America you're in, but also what part of the world you're in. So in Africa, we have 3 distilleries that we've just converted. We're now using biomass, and that's sourced by solar. So it really, for us, is really when we go into a region, looking at what's available in the region, what makes sense in the region, and then applying that technology.
That makes sense. And you almost have to have a different strategy for every territory that you're operating in, yeah?
Yeah, we do. And so that's the lens that we're looking at things through. So we have taken a very much test and learn approach as we've gone through this, and we realize one size won't fit all. Not just globally, but even within the US, one size hasn't been a one size fit all.
Yeah.
So our approach has been to modify, look at where we are, and think about what's best for that region to get to a cost neutral, most cost effective, and what's available in the region that we're operating.
Do I have any questions from the audience at all? I do say I'll give you a chance, and then yes. Yes, we'll just get a microphone over to you. If you just state your name, just down here, please, Charlie. If you just state your name and where you're from, could you just put your hand up again, please, so we can find you? There we go. Just tell us who you are and where you're from, please.
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
My name is Denise O'Daro, and I am head of ESG and sustainability at a private equity firm called PAI Partners. Marsha, thank you very much. It's so insightful. I was curious whether you have an internal carbon price, and whether you are using, or whether you have also a hurdle rate internally for the CapEx project for your decarbonisation. So that's on decarbon. Sorry, I'll just add one more, which is on the water, on the water work you're doing, and wondering whether you have an overall sort of biodiversity, nature and biodiversity strategy, which that fits under, and if you can talk more about that. Thank you.
So we do have an internal carbon rate, and I have my corporate relations. It's around $70 a metric ton that we do use, and we do have a hurdle rate. So all CapEx projects within our business have a hurdle rate, so we do apply that. And in terms of our water program, yes, that does sit under biodiversity. That sits on our global platform. That's led by our global team, where we look at from a water standpoint, where do we have water stressed, where are we operating water stressed areas? So for us, it's the big 3 are probably in India, in Africa, as well as in Mexico. So as an example of the 100 water basins that have been defined across the globe, 8 of them actually sit in India. So that's something that's really, really important to us. So I mentioned earlier, when we think of what's strategically the most critical things for us, water and then carbon are the top 2. With water being a much bigger focus, I would say in other parts of the world. In the US, we happen to not have as big a challenge in water, but there are different parts of the world where that is significant for us in our business.
And yeah, another question here. Thank you.
Hi, Marsha. Thanks. It was really great to hear your comments. My name's Dave Perlow. I'm from Dow. And, I manufacture chemicals and polymers for a living. One doesn't often think about your industry from a carbon standpoint, but it's an energy-intensive industry. And God bless you for doing all the stuff that you're doing and your company. I had one question about your customer base. Mm-hmm. It's clear that you're passionate about this, and it's clear that the employees are. What about your customer base? What data do you have that they're interested in this, and what data do you have that this might potentially give you a competitive advantage beyond what you're doing for the planet?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit about a small brand called Bullet Bourbon. Hopefully you guys. Fantastic. So Bullet is positioned, it's a frontier whiskey. And actually, the distilleries that we have both in Lebanon and Shelbyville support our Bullet distillation. And Bullet is actually, for that brand, because of who we know the consumer is very much focused on sustainability. So we've actually had partnerships with American Forests around reforestation that Bullet has supported. Bullet was one of the first brands when we talked about going to a carbon neutral distillery, talked about going to carbon neutrality. And that's because of the insight that we have from those consumers. And recently, if you haven't tried it, I'll do a shameless plug. We have launched Bullet Single Malt, Bullet Single Malt. And the bottle for that single malt is 100% recycled content. For anybody that knows glass, that's a huge deal. So we do know that consumers are this is something that's important to consumers. And actually, from a brand standpoint, we're actually accessing new consumers through our brands in terms of telling the story around how sustainable our brands are.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's a really good question. Thank you. Send me a case. I'll be happy to recycle those bottles for you. I think we should leave it there before I get carried away. But really interesting to speak to you. Thank you so much, Marsha.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam.